Okay. Versatile Vigilante, Young Vince, Uncle Vinny. We're back in here. We got a special guest. We got the man Josh, aka Lens of Yashu.
Hey Vinny, how are you doing today, man?
What's going on, my guy? Thank you for coming through.
Yeah, it's been dope, man. You know, just getting here and all that, like checking out like the nice areas around before I got here. Like it's pretty dope, and like just like within this time, it's just perfect timing right now. You know?
Hell yeah, man. No, I'm glad. I'm glad we set this up. You were telling me. You grew up in downtown Toronto. We record out of Mississauga, so there's definitely a different vibe there.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting vibe. You know, like the GO train ride was like just kind of interesting. You know, even like during this time with the weather, like it was snowing like crazy and all that, and just like the vibe of it, it's just like a refreshing like weather and all that. You know, like even though it's kind of like the worst conditions, I just felt like that vibe today. It's just kind of nice, you know. So
yeah, I feel you, bro. Kind of that last bit of winter, hopefully.
Yeah.
You know, awesome, man. So. For anyone that doesn't know, Lens of Yashu, aka Josh, I'll call him both probably throughout this interview, does some really fire content in the city. Actually learned about this guy because we interviewed a few of the same people and we kind of linked up. So we'll have a Inception, you know, interviewer interviews the interviewer today. So I want to get right to the beginning, bro. How'd you how'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up? We talked about downtown.
So I was born in like Grange Park in downtown Toronto, like my whole life. So if anyone knows like Grange Park and all that, it's by like the AGO, like University, like Dundas Strip, or like, you know, within the Spadina Strip. So I could say like border wise, like from west of Beverly, east of University, north of Dundas, like south of Queen, like just around those ends and all that. Like you have the AGO, you have OCAD, you have like a lot of like nice areas and all that, like very strong like Asian community and all that, like because it's like nearby like Chinatown too. Like it kind of has like that nice vibe and all that. You know, I checked out, like I did like a lot of things there, like as a kid, you know, like played basketball, like played ball at the community center, like swimmed, you know, checked out the AGO for a bit, you know, like would go like on daily walks like all around school and all that. It's just like a nice vibe and all that. So, and if you're into like Chinatown too, like a lot of like nice foods and all that, a lot of like nice places to get massages, you know, some nice stuff to like get like to drink like bubble tea and all that. It's just like a nice end, you know.
Hell yeah, bro. I feel like that part of the city specifically is really the heart. You got everything in walking distance too, but yeah, where you grew up is super interesting because that's like the arts district. You got Kensington right down the street.
U of T, like sort of like up in north and all that, but like that's just kind of like another end, like just near the university and all that. But like you'll have like the Eden Center just like close by to Queen West if you want to like shop and stuff like that. You know, Alexandra Park. So like we're kind of like next door to Alexandra Park. So if you know like Alexandra Park, well-known rappers from there, Casper, K-Money, Vanauley Stacks, Mr. Comfortable. So actually a fun fact, I actually used to go to school with Vanauley Stacks and Mr. Comfortable and Casper, actually Central Commerce Collegiate. So they used to be by there like a lot, you know, hung out with them like at a couple of times, like not really Casper, but like I knew more of like Vanauley Stacks, and you know I've seen like Mr. Comfortable around and all that. And then Casper, like he was there like kind of like half a semester like in my last year of high school and all that. We're like kind of like the same age, so it's just kind of like an interesting vibe from there, you know.
That's super interesting, bro. That group of rappers is probably my favorite from Toronto, and I always thought like just growing up downtown is so wild to me. I always grew up like Mississauga, kind of a little far from the action. I was always like, man, downtown, you walk outside, you're on Queen Street West, like that's so cool.
I mean, you have your great parts and then you have your kind of like sketchy parts and all that. Like I know with downtown there's like a lot of like homelessness going on around there. Like you could see it in Alexandra Park, you saw it like Queen West, you'll see it like maybe like East Pier and all that. So sometimes you'll get some good sights, sometimes you'll get some bad sights and all that, but that's just like life, you know. So
100%, bro. When you were growing up downtown, did you feel like that helped shape you as a person?
I mean, it made me more aware of like different cultures and like different people like living around there, like what was like the norm back then versus like now and all that. So like back then, you know, it was kind of quiet, you know, like usually like even though it's like downtown, like it never sleeps and all that, like we didn't have like condos like back then as it was like now and all that. So like I was born in like the mid like 90s and all that, like 96. So around that time, like Spadina Avenue, like if you go down south, it's just like parking lots around there. Like you'll see like empty, like it used to be like a lot of like empty areas or like office spaces like before those condos like came around and all that. And yeah, even parking lots too. But like now with gentrification, with everything else going on, you know, like they're trying to change every part of a landmark as it could be. You know, like what used to be like the Silver Dollar on Spadina and College, you know, now it's condos and all that. What used to be like a parking lot or just like a place for people to go to church or people to rest, you know, another condo, you know. So that's just Toronto for you, like in that sense too, especially downtown. Like everything has to change for a reason, you know.
No, it's true, man. The gentrification and it's very visible right now. Even Alexandra Park, like they tore a bunch of that down.
Yeah.
It's funny to me because you see like these condos going up and they're marketed as like, oh, Alexandra condos, and people are buying them having no idea the history, you know.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see.
It's actually like a crazy truth, you know, because with gentrification, a lot, like I actually used to do like some construction security for a bit too, like here and there, and like one of the main reasons why they tell me like why they're building condos is because a lot of like foreign people are buying those areas, or like people from other backgrounds are using it just like as property for sale and all that,
Yeah.
for rentals and stuff like that. And you could see like in those condos they become like very empty, like when you go inside there for work or if you're doing other stuff too. So it's kind of like interesting, like on who's like living in the condo. You don't even know if someone's actually like living there, but like someone bought that property, you know. So that's just kind of like an interesting vibe too, because you have like a lot of like empty condos that are marketed at like 1 mil or 2 mil or 3 mil, like for whatever like the price is, but then not a lot of people like in the city can afford it in that sense too, you know. Most people are either like living on minimum wage, or they're on Ontario Works, or they're on like some sort of like welfare, or some people are like working class too, and like some people can't afford it at that rate too. So you're gonna have to settle in for renting in that sense, you know. So
It's true, bro. I mean, all across the country right now, even the States too, like buying a property right now is not the easiest thing, man. A lot of the people that grew up where they grew up, going to be tough to own anything, you know?
yeah.
It's wild to see, but that shows you like the importance of keeping this culture, and especially Toronto, like so much history, so many great, you even named like 5 guys right there that you went to school with, and there's a ton more, you know.
Yeah. Another fact too was that Delano Banton, who plays for the Raptors now, he actually used to come by to Commerce like at my last year of high school and all that. Like he was there like when I was like pretty much graduating, but then I think he stayed for a bit too, because he was like in grade 9 when I was like in grade 12 and all that. So you'll see like a lot of like changes, like when people like go to the same school as you know people from real life, because you never know that he's going to be like a basketball player, you never know that he's going to be like a rapper and all that, you know. So it's just kind of like that lifestyle on how like life changes like at a certain age, because some people, they'll either stay in like the same position their whole lives, or others like they'll have like some sort of like traumatic change or some sort of like experience that changes them to become like better and all that. Because with Delano, like, you know, he was just like a young kid just having fun doing like what any other like grade 9 student would do, but then you'd never see him be like on that level that he is now, because some people like it might change like when you never even see it, you know. Like he might have went to college, might have had like a life-changing experience, you know, got an opportunity for his life, and you know he made it work, you know. So
it's a great point, bro. You never know what someone's capable of. You never know where you might end up.
Yeah,
is very true. Growing up downtown, especially in that area too, a lot of wild shit going on. Were you ever tempted to kind of go down that route? You know, like kind of the temptation side of things.
I mean, I never like kind of like came up with like the fuckery and all that. You know, I was just sort of like in my own lane, just focusing on like what I need to do in life to be wherever I can be. You know, like right now, like at that time too, like it was crazy because throughout that time, I grew up like with the internet and all that. So like I used to play like a lot of computer games as a kid too. Like I was exposed to the computer a lot, just, you know, playing like whatever game that I could do. And then I founded the internet just years later, and then founded like a lot of like other stuff. And then you'll find like other content throughout the way too. Like some people like they'll find porn, some people they'll find like Wikipedia and all that, some people they'll find like forums or music and all that. And then as far as like gaming and such, like I got serious into gaming like maybe at around, I would say like maybe grade 8, grade 9, like, you know, with the Xbox 360. I had like my first Xbox 360 as a kid, just played like a lot of games, and then, you know, just found out more games from my friends and all that who used to play games. But then sort of like life sort of changed me because like my parents like strict like Ethiopian parents and all that, so they would tell me to always study, to always like focus on school and all that. And I kind of did, like I wanted to have that whole like teenage lifestyle, like playing video games, having fun. But I realized that it's not all that in life. Sometimes you're gonna have to work, sometimes you're gonna have to make sacrifices in order to become the better person that you could be. And like I would only play like maybe like video games like maybe like on Christmas break or on March break or like in the summertime and all that. And I wouldn't mind it too, like I'd still be into gaming. But then I realized life changed when I realized I wasn't into gaming as I was like anymore and all that, like here and there. But then that's what kind of got me into like music in that sense too, just like because I would like listen to songs like here and there, like maybe grade 9, grade 10, like I'd find a song from like a classmate, or I'd find like something from like the internet and all that, like because like I would say like I got more into like rock and like punk like at around like grade 5, grade 6, from like the Offspring, Bad Religion, like just strictly off of video games and all that. And then Kiss, like a whole lot of rock bands. And then got into like rap from like Nas, from like Black Sheep and all that. Like I would say like Nas would be the first rapper I actually like ever like listened to, like maybe around like my kid years. So like the first song that I heard was from Illmatic. It was The World Is Yours, which had like that nice like dope beat, that dope feeling. And then it led on to like other forms of music. And then I listened to like Eminem, like Not Afraid, like which was like a dope song. And then it led me into like listening to like Wiz Khalifa and Drake and like The Weeknd and like Lloyd Banks, like grade 9, grade 10. And then Biggie Smalls, like grade 10 and all that. Like I would like find out more of my music from like the radio and from like Much Music. I used to like watch Much Music like in the mornings and all that, and I'd find like some dope songs here and there. They used to have it like on channel 29 and like channel like 36. They'd play like a variety of songs, and then I'd find out like more about them. And then I'd listen to some pop stuff here and there. And then I didn't dig deeper until like the end of grade 11, start of grade 12, where I'd almost like listen to like a hip hop song or like a rock song like almost every day and all that. And I would dedicate my time into like learning more about hip hop, learning more about like rap music, learning more about R&B, other forms of music. And then it just like went on from there.
Hell yeah, man. I like that you brought up the Much Music, because we're about the same age, and that's I think a common thread for a lot of kids our age, watching Much Music, watching music videos. Hell yeah, man. So how'd you first even get into, so you're a photographer before interviewer, correct?
Yeah, so I started off on photography. I'd say like more of my first introduction was like maybe between grade 8 to grade 10. So grade 8 I had like a point and shoot like as a kid, and I would test it out like here and there, like taking photos of my family members, taking photos of friends, taking photos of like certain areas like all around like Toronto. And then it led to getting into this program where this guy named, I think Ulu, from Concrete Roses, like he used to be like a community leader like around the Alexandra Park area. That's, shout out to him by the way too, because he used to come to like Commerce and all that. He exposed me to this program where you learn more about film photography and all that, and we learned from like actual like students and photographers. And we'd had like this project where we had to like learn how to use like a film camera, like learn how to use like a certain theme for our photos and all that. And mine was basically more on like video games and all that, like on how video games like ruins like relationships. So the theme was like reflection, and like it was like the reflections of how like temptation, so like with video games was my example, it would lead on to like worse issues and cause like relationships with like gaming, with couples, like stuff like that. I could explain, like it's been like a while since I did that, but like it was just around that theme. And then I kind of stopped getting into photography for a bit too until the start of, I'd say the end of my university year, so back in like 2018. So I never expected to get like like an actual like camera, like a DSLR camera as a graduation gift. I would have expected like money and all that. And then I had the camera for the first time. I thanked my parents for getting me that like as a graduation gift. Without it, I don't know like where I would be like in my life right now. And then I just kind of like learned how to do photography, just learned how to take certain photos, like learned like how to go to like certain places. And then I was going to concerts at that time too, like way before I did the whole photography thing. Sorry about that. So basically, I'd go to like any concert and I'd see like a lot of photographers that used to take photos, and then it was cool. I wanted to do something like that someday. Like take photos, shoot at like artists, shoot at people, and all that. And it actually led on to getting me into a spot like North by Northeast. Like not actually, but like I found it like a perfect opportunity to take some photos. This is like when Azalea Banks and like Youngblood and like Jazz Cartier, like shout out to all of them too, were actually performing. Took a lot of photos of them. And then I had this like one iconic shot of like Jazz Cartier, just like standing like on the railing, and then it was kind of like at nighttime too. It was sort of like some whole like Travis Scott like type thing, and then like I had the flash on too because it was like a kit lens with a pointage with actual DSLR with the flash on. Like it was just like an interesting moment, and then I was just sending it to a lot of people that would lead me into positions to get into shows at that time too. So with 40 Ounce Heroes, with Rap Season, with Embrace, like that type of like those type of promoters too. I was just sending them my way, and then the first person who actually hit me up was 40 Ounce Heroes, who's actually my friend John, by the way. Shout out to John, who's actually the founder of 40 Ounce. He liked the photo, he wanted to repost it, and then he gave me an opportunity to shoot at this event just like a week later, and I took the deal. I couldn't say no to an offer, and then went to the area for the first time too. Like I was sort of like new to photography, so I didn't know like what the expectations of concert photography were and like what was required and all that. I just like thought like, hey, if I would take these photos, take them in like an interesting light, take them as how other people took it, then it would be fine. And then learned throughout the way to like I think when I was shooting like at those events, I remembered I would get like some feedback from like John, like, hey, you should do it like this way, hey, you should use like a better like camera for lighting and all that. You should use like a better lens for like lighting and all that, and for imagery, and like getting like the position like right, the angling and all that. And it just like manifested from there for me buying like a lot of like lenses and stuff like that, and just like learning like what is like needed in that sense too. And then I had like an opportunity, I actually wanted to like I could actually like explain more too, because this is like way before. So like I wanted to shoot as many concerts as I can, and then I was just shooting events from here and there, and then from other like events that I could easily get access to, or I would have to do like some protocol that I have to get into. And then I shot like the Young Tory event. I shot like some like comedy shows and all that, and some other areas. This is actually like how I got blocked from my first IG. So basically, when I would only like DM people to get into events and all that, and then it would become like a continuous habit where it worked out, and then sometimes too, it led to my downfall for a bit too, because my first IG got deleted after sending like so many DMs so much, where it led to like spam and all that, and then I had to like restart all over like on the media branding side. But then as the photography like grew, like I just learned like what was like the right way, like sending emails, sending like pitches to shoot at these events to like working for publications, and we can like get onto that like later on. That's kind of like how I got into the whole like publication thing for a bit too.
It's a hell of a story, bro. So basically from your graduation gift, you turned that into a fucking career.
Yeah, I'd say it's a career too, like a starting career at the moment, and then leading on to something bigger and better and all that. Like I still like write for like publications. I still work with other people like in that sense too. But then when I started, like I never thought like it would happen. So my first initial start to getting into a publication was going to like a lot of concerts, like a lot. And then I went to this Alina Barrage show. This was like September of like 2018, where I met up with this photographer who shoots for an American publication called like Imprint Entertainment, and then she led me on to working with them and wanting what I need to do. And then I shot like events like professionally from there. So I went and shot like Sophie Tucker, which is like an EDM group out of like the States, Alan Stone, Cadence Weapon, who's like a rapper from like Edmonton, and then it led on for me to do like interviews and like write-ups, because initially they liked my writing for a bit too, and they liked how it was like composed and also like formulated, like with sentencing, with grammar and everything else too, and just with the bold and indent and italics. And then they said like, hey, can you do like these write-ups, can you do these reviews, can you do these interviews? And then it led on to me like writing reviews, doing interviews for the first time. So I've interviewed like Fatboy SSC, Rod Wave before like Hard on Ice was even like a hit song. This EDM artist named Ronan Harris of like V&V Nation. And who else? I'd say I don't know if you know Griselda Blanco, like with the Family line and all that. So
CLE?
No, Griselda Blanco.
The actual Griselda Blanco. Yeah.
So like I interviewed her son and his wife, like, but I actually didn't like interview them like, you know, voice to voice. So another person who owns Imprint did the interviews while I did the write-ups, but I formulated like the questions too, and then just led on from there.
That's so cool, bro. And with the other interviews, was that all how did that actually take place? Like, I've never done a written interview before, so what is it? They're basically talking, you're just talking and you're writing down what they say?
So like a written interview is composed in this unique sense. So usually you'd start off by writing the questions first, and then they'll let you like do like a phone interview with them where you actually have to like record the voice and all that. So you'd have to start recording like right away, and then you speak, you let them know like it's a written interview, this is being recorded, do you consent? And then they agree, and then you just ask the questions, and then like whatever answer they give you, like once it's finished, you have to like transcribe it. So transcribing, it's a worthwhile process, like it takes like a lot of time and a lot of like patience. So you have to find out like every word that they have to say, every sentence, every like phrase, or like every like quotation that they say, and like you'd have to type that down. If you missed it, you have to start over, like just like finding it, and then that's when you get like the actual like information from there. Sometimes it takes like almost like a day to transcribe, or like maybe 2 days depending on your work ethic and your patience, and then you lead on to like writing like whatever was said, forming like whatever was best said possible, like what they said in a very like in paraphrasing, paraphrasing like what they say, and whatever works out, whatever was like the best quality of like writing, it just goes from there,
Absolutely, man. That's good to know, because there's so many different ways of kind of getting yourself out there. You're a great example of that, where you kind of just start with the photos, eventually meet people, network. They like your writing style, turns that into interviews, turns that into a ton of contacts for you. That's amazing to hear, man.
Yeah. And then like there was some issues with Imprint at that time too, so I was supposed to do like a lot of like content for Imprint, with interviews, with reviews, with concerts, and then this is like when I was doing TLOY like for the first time too on my own, and then I was like, hey, maybe I could do this, maybe I could have like my own publication so that I could like interview artists, I could shoot shows, I could do events. And then initially I was supposed to interview Detch Revs for the first time. So if you know Detch Revs, he works with like not with Tory Lanez, Young Tory, Kevin Rowley. He looks like Kasky for a bit too, but like not in that sense. But I contacted his management team, and they said like, hey, I wanted to do like a photo op as well as like an interview with Detch Revs, for my publication, which I'm starting out. And they said, yeah, it's cool. You have to pay like $300 like on e-transfer. And I was like, I kind of have like some issues at the moment too, because I thought like it would be like something else and all that. Like I don't know if I would formulate that on time and all that. And then I just didn't hear from them again. And then basically I found like this other person from the street actually. So usually when I would go out for walks and all that, like I would see posters, and then there was this one guy by the name of like Wiz the MC, who's actually like a very big artist like right now, like in the indie world. He's big on like hyperpop and like indie pop at the moment. He's doing like a lot of like tours and a lot of festivals and all that. He was living in Toronto at that time too, from like Germany and South Africa. He was doing like a lot of like open mic events, a lot of like performances here and there. And then I tried to contact him from IG and all that, and from Twitter and like from his email, and then I was like, hey, I would like to interview you for my platform and then take photos. He agreed. We did it in that sense too, took the photos and, you know, just worked on from there. And then I kind of stopped for a bit too because I was kind of focusing on getting into other publications at the moment, because like while I was dealing with my issues at imprint, I was looking at other companies that would be like dope. And then there was this one guy that I met at a Reggie Snow concert. You know, I just checked it out just for fun. He told me about this publication called Music Why Not, which this young woman actually had like at the time too. He said, I think the owner is like 18 years old, 19 years old. You know, she's doing well like within the photo scene, doing well with posts and articles and photo ops. You know, you should definitely join. And I was like, hey, yeah, sure, I'll try to get into it. And then, you know, I emailed them, they agreed. You know, they told me like, hey, which shows do you want to shoot? And this is like at around like January, February, like around that time when it happened. And I was like, hey, I'll shoot these like shows right here, and then accepted them. And then with imprint, you know, like nothing was coming by, like things were slowing down. And that's when like, hey, I'll just focus on this other publication at the moment. You know, I met up with I didn't actually meet up with them, because here's the thing, they're in Dallas, Texas. So like whatever contact we have, you know, I just shoot the show from there, like in Toronto. And then, you know, I asked if I want to do the show. They agree. Like, if it works out, it works out. Shoot the events and, you know, do the editing and then post the article. And then it just like led on from there. Worked with like another publication too in that same like amount, but like they're actually from Toronto, called like the Heavy Press. And, you know, I actually shot my first event with them, I think, in June of 2019. Just, I think, when the Raptors had the parade, like that day. Like, so that would be like that day where I shot like an event for them, did some write-ups and such, and yeah.
So you've worked with various different companies, various different publications. What led you to actually creating the Lens of Yashu, which is your brand?
I felt like for me, like I wanted to get like a quick start on my photography, just a quick start on what I could do creative-wise, you know, lead on to opportunities, because I actually wanted to be in the music industry for a bit, you know, like whatever I could be, you know, like just like how like Vlad was, like just like how CHE's was, because I used to watch all their content like all the time, you know, with Vlad TV interviews, with CHE's TV interviews and all that, you know, just like seeing what they do, seeing like what they could work on, and then like, hey, I could do that, you know, maybe focus more on the music, more on what is like a vital importance of their sound, and, you know, just find out more about them, you know, give like smaller artists like, or like people of like certain followings like a certain shine like in the city and all that, like whether in Toronto, whether around the world, you know. And then, you know, worked on from there. You know, it was just like a quick start to get into my photography, but then I realized like, hey, I could actually make this into a platform and all that. You know, I just sorry, it was just like I knew that I could manifest it into something bigger like at that time too. And then, you know, I would find like whichever artist like I could like interview or I could like link up with, and then, hey, if we do like the photo op, if we do the write up, it works on from there. If you could send me photos, that would be dope too, you know. And then, you know, just creating like a portfolio of what I could do like at the moment, because I was working with other people at that time too on the side while I was doing like the platform. And then, you know, just like doing with the interviews, like, because like at that time I was only doing photo and write-up interviews, like not really like the video interviews, because I didn't have like a 4K camera at that time too. I only had like the DSLR crop sensor, so I could just do like, I was just doing like what was like best for me at the moment. And then I think like COVID hit, and then I realized like, hey, you know, maybe take a step back into like what I'm doing like at the moment, you know, with the concert photography, because I kind of like stopped TLOI at the side too, like when I got like more opportunities to shoot concerts and events, and I only focused on that rather than TLOI. And then I think it kind of like led to a different sense of my path, because I thought like I could only do concert photography rather than my own thing. And then when COVID hit, like that changed everything, because like no shows were happening, no events were coming by and all that, like no one wanted to do photos. And then I was just like, hey, maybe focus on like TLOI for a bit, you know. And then I guess I'll discuss like more like within other questions, you know.
That's such an interesting point because a lot of people that I talk to, whatever industry they're in, that COVID hit, when COVID hit, it forced kind of everyone to take a look at their life and say, all right, a change has to happen now. Things are going to be different now, and either don't do anything or we try to make the most of it. And to hear you had that experience too it's really interesting. It's super common, I feel.
Yeah.
It's pretty dope. With the concert stuff, was there something a part of going to the concert and shooting that you really enjoyed? Like, did you feel right off the bat it was something you were going to continue to do? Was there a moment that you're like, fuck, I really like doing this?
With me, like, I loved going to concerts, and I loved, like, trying to shoot, like, rappers and all that, and, like, artists of, like, all brands. And with concert photography, you know, like, usually you have to shoot, like, whatever you can, you know, like, in that sense, too, because you're not going to start out, like, shooting Drake or shooting, like, J. Cole or shooting, like, Britney Spears and all that. Yeah. You're going to have to start out, like, small, just like everyone else, too. Like, you're going to have to start out, like, shooting, like, smaller shows or, like, smaller brands. And that's how I worked with 40 Ounce. Just shot their events, which are, like, kind of, like, more smaller events, or, like, more, like, local acts, or, like, whatever, like, big Canadian act was in at the time, too, like, with KO, with, Ice the One, with Isa, with Borlison, like all these other acts too. You're gonna have to shoot them, and then it has to progress. I know with Imprint, Music Why Not, and Heavy Press, you know, it was kind of like a clutch too, because I could start to shoot more bigger events in that sense too. But then I kind of shot like more people that were accepting of photographers at that time too. So like when I told you, like, I shot like Sophie Tucker, I shot Alan Stone, I shot Caroline Rose from Imprint. It led on to me shooting like smaller events for Music Why Not, which I started off shooting like Emily Rose. I think Emily Rose at that time, she's like a indie R&B artist out of like New York. And then I think like as far as like my big highlights of Music Why Not, I shot like Beast Coast. So if you know Beast Coast, it's like Joey Badass, Flatbush Zombies, the Underachievers, and then I shot like Mahalia, BJ, the Chicago Kid. Who else? I shot Ali Brooke from Fifth Harmony. I shot Julia Michaels. Like those were like sort of like a roster that I've shot. And then with Heavy Press, I shot Breaking Benjamin, 3 Days Grace. I shot Catfish and the Bottlemen. I shot Fury of a Dead Man, which go by like Fury now. And then on my own, I actually had the chance to shoot like Xavier Wolf, Dax, Stally from like MMG, like those artists. And that was just off, you know, linking up with like the promoter, like, hey, can I shoot these artists? They agree, like, and we work on like a plan on like what we could do. So like I'd send them photos while I get to shoot the show and all that, you know. So like you kind of have to work in a 50-50 status quo type level and all that. And then actually, who else? I'm trying to figure out like right now. Yeah.
Were you in like for lack of a better term, like I'll take what I can get mindset at that time? Like, fuck it, let me just get the experience.
Yeah, it's usually like, hey, like instead of like shooting your favorite artists, maybe create a portfolio of like artists that you don't really like or artists you don't really know, and see like how interesting they are in terms of the sound, in terms of what you could get photo wise too, what imagery is like best for them too. As far as like Music Why Not, I also shot AJ Tracy, Ghost Main, and I think Marshmello as well too.
Shout out Ghost Main. I went to his show one time. Legend.
Yeah, nice, pretty dope. And yeah, it was just like kind of like learning their sound, like kind of like learning their angles too. And you know, you never know who you're going to shoot. You know, like I shot like a Santana show. I shot like who else? I shot Young Tory like way before like the publications and all that. I shot who else?
Do you think, sorry to cut you off, like, do you think that so you named people that are straight, like, classical hip-hop, rock, punk, all these different types of music, so different types of vibes in the shows. Do you think being in those different types of vibes helped you grow as an artist, as a creator?
Like, for me, like, it made me learn more about, like, up-and-coming artists, like, new artists at the time, too, like, new sounds that I never really got to know at that time, just, like, new environments of, like, certain cults and certain like fan bases too. Like, what do people usually do with these events? Like, what artists do they like mainly listen to? Like, what does the artist like? You know, what is the artist like inspired by too? And just finding out like the environment. You know, like going to from a show like at a smaller venue versus going at like a big venue. It's kind of like a very like big difference too, because when you go to smaller venues, you see like it's more like family friendly. It's more like, hey, we're a family, you know, like we know the artist personally, like in terms of their sound, in terms of their story, their history, their upbringing, versus like at a bigger show when you just only know like one or two songs of the artist and all hits. That. Yeah. And like with me, it's just like when I shoot these events too, like I kind of go out like on a good note, you know, because like I find out more about like what that artist does or what sound does that artist make and all that, and how I could like manifest it into something bigger, like in that sense too. Do I want to try something with flash? Do I want to try something with writing? Do I want to try something with how I angle my shots too? Like, what does the artist like in terms of like photos and all that? Because usually like you have to do it when you're trying to like shoot an event. There's like a lot of ways you could do it. You have to either contact the promoter, you're gonna have to contact like Live Nation. If you're shooting like a Live Nation event, you're gonna have to like speak with your not publicist, with your lead for the publisher and all that. You know, like you have to speak with the publisher. Like, hey, what shows should I shoot? Should I shoot this show? Is someone shooting that show? Like, do you need anyone to help you out with that? And they find out like whatever like requirements are needed, like what photos are needed, like what's the best angling and all that. Like, what's the best way to like write the email, and that's how we formulated into being like a better concept photographer. Because with concept photography, you know, you could shoot like any big artist, but then you don't know like what that image is, you know, like you don't know like if that image is going to be right, because sometimes too like they're going to give you like a request format, like, hey, these artists like only prefer like these photos, you know, like this is what you have to do, like how many shots you have to do, like what can you do, what you cannot do. Like if you break that rule too, like they're not going to take the photo. But like if you take like sort of like a decent photo, like they're gonna take it in that sense too. Whereas if there is no contract, you know, you could just shoot whatever you want, and whatever's like the best photo, you know, they just post it up there, you know. So
right, because you're taking the correct approach. You're not skipping the steps, and you're being professional. At the end of the day, I feel like people trust you when you're professional. You know, whatever the talent is, if you go about things kind of funny, you won't get to maybe make it as far as you might want to. So that's a great story, bro.
And also, you know, with concert photography, there is like a lot of rules that a lot of photographers have to like look into. You know, don't like shoot in the crowd. You know, first 3 songs you're out. You know, because you actually have to shoot the first 3 songs. You can't shoot the entire event. And those like, you know, promoters and those like live venues and those places, and these artists too, like they have like a certain requirement on what you need to do, like no flash, you know, no, if you're like not like with the band or you're not with the artist, you can't shoot like in the stage, you know, you can't like diddle like around in the crowd and all that.
Right.
And I actually had a photographer friend of mine who did the complete opposite. And so basically what happened was that he shot the event at like a variety of areas, you know, to be like a rebel and all that. And this is actually at a very big event, like for Live Nation. So this was like the Breaking Benjamin concert. He shot it at like a variety of areas and all that. I'm not gonna say his like name and all that, like, you know, not to like expose people, but just like as a story, we'll say A. So A was like shooting at certain areas of the venue, like near the crowd, like near the stage area. He was shooting like more like than what he was supposed to do and all that, and then he would post the photos, like do whatever. He did it for like a different publication, but he worked for the same publication as me too at the time. Sorry, I'm not gonna say that name, like just not to expose him, but like not the publication, but like just as I said, yeah. But what happened was that like he was shooting it for a different publication at the time too, and a lot of people found it out, like from Live Nation, from the publications that he worked with, and like everyone else too. And he actually got banned from shooting a lot of like Live Nation shows again, and from like a lot of like publications, because you broke that rule that a lot of photographers have to like follow, you know. And like it makes other photographers like look bad, you know, because some people like they don't care about the rules, because it's kind of like free for all like mentality sometimes too. You're gonna have to do whatever it takes to like take the best shot, to take the best imagery, to find out like what's your niche, what's your like photo style and all that. But like most like people can't take that, you know, like they follow these like rules for years and all that. And you know they're getting stricter like every time like that happens, you know, and like if it like messes up the image, it messes up the venue, you know, you ruined like a whole lot of connections that you can make from there, you know, because even shooting a good photo or even like following the rules or even being good, like even if you're being good like with like the publicist, with the artists, with the promoters, with the venue, you know, you could have made like a lot of opportunities to do like some other stuff like someday, you know. But some people, you know, like they're all for the risk, you know. They're all
take the shortcut.
Yeah.
That's a great lesson, bro. The shortcut can really set you back in the long run. Better to just play it smart, do what you're supposed to do, get further, and then. No, that's an awesome lesson, bro. I want to ask you about the interviewing specifically. So you got into the video interviewing, COVID, you said?
Yeah, so during that time, I was still doing like write-ups between April of 2020 till actually March of 2020 until August of 2020. So I was just interviewing like whatever artists I had at that time too, and then you know I was kind of like working pretty much, so I didn't really had like enough time to do like a lot of photography and such. You know, saved up my money to get some new lenses, saved up my money to actually buy the 4K camera that I still use for interviews like till this day for people who want to check out. And then it led me to buying like mics and buying gears and all that, and then I would hit up the people that I was supposed to do like video interviews with, but I had to cut them off because I didn't have the camera at the time, and then reach out to them. They agreed, you know, we did the interviews, and you know it worked out from there, you know, just like learning how to use a 4K camera, like learning how to like do better angling, learning how to use Premiere Pro, like it works from there, you know, and like just like knowing the image, the crispness of clarity, and just what you have to use and all that, you know, what you have to use like on a micro free form versus like a crop sensor versus like what like styles you have to use. So like with other cameras you're gonna have to use like 1080p, whereas this is when you use like an actual like 4K camera, so you have to find out like what's good for the 4K camera. Like, do I have to use like a high bit rate and all that? Do I have to use like a mid bit rate? All that type of stuff, you know.
You got the technical aspect on point. That's interesting, bro. It's interesting with so we're kind of in the same space a little bit, like do interviews, I do interviews, different style. It's interesting to me to see how people do their interviews and have run their brand, because it's like everyone has their own different style, and it's pretty interesting to see. One thing I wanted to ask you about with the interviews was you do the Zoom interviews or the virtual interviews, right? Yeah. So how's that vibe?
So I do like a mix between the Zoom interviews versus like the actual in-person interviews. So with the Zoom interviews, I mainly do it like from that time. I would either only do it if we were still dealing with COVID with Toronto artists, or if they're like out-of-town artists. So usually with like a lot of out-of-town artists, you know, like I'd reach out to them via Zoom because that's the only accessible way possible. Like they agree and all that, it works out, and set out like the angling for that, like find out like what's the best imagery for it, you know. Tell them like, hey, this is gonna like be recorded and all that, like this is the way we have to format it. They agree. Once it's finished, you know, I just export the like footage and then do like the editing aspect for it. Try to make it within the best quality possible, or within their requests too. Like I know with some I would have to do a little bit more extra to get like that image that they wanted in that sense too, like whether like we'd have like good cameras, or whether we would try like a different form of audio, or like a different like niche when it comes to like the styling of the video, and you know just worked on from there, versus like the in-person like interviews where it could either work out like on their requests or on my style and all that. So with their requests, we find out like what they like what's needed, like we kick it via Zoom or via like FaceTime, like is this what you wanted, is this the styling that you wanted, like what do you need else, do you want me to cut that image out for you and all that, and it would work on from there. Or like if they like just like the stuff that I made so far, it would just like work out right now.
Do you have a favorite part of interviewing? And I'm picking on interviewing specifically just out of curiosity. Is there a part of it that you enjoy the most?
It's just like finding out more about them in that sense too, just finding about their story, like what they've done to be that person that they are today, you know, because some people, they'll either have like an extraordinary journey on like what they've done, versus if they just started and like their only journey is like what they've had before in the past too, before like making music. Because, so like when I've interviewed people like Craig Mums Grant and LaShawn Shulman, who was of Sister, they have like a lot of like interesting journeys that they've had throughout their lives, because they've actually managed to accomplish like a lot of like milestones in their life that they never thought they would, like being in a TV show, or being in a girl group, or rapping for this many years, versus like someone who's only in the game for like maybe a year to like 5 years, and they've only made like a certain amount of like music so far, like small songs like here and there too, or they've already had like interviews where they talked about the story, and then we communicate more about like other stuff, like politics, or with their sound, or with what they see in the Toronto scene and all that. But like when I start off with someone who I've never actually like met before, like in that sense too, or I've never really communicated as much, we tend to find out more about them before they got into the whole like music side. So whether like they've had like a good childhood, or whether they've had like a music experience like at home, or if their family ever did like music back then, or what inspired them to make music, like what was like a life change for them to get into the whole like music scene. And it would be like an interesting journey from there. With some people, like it's just kind of like straightforward, hey, I just wanted to rap, I just wanted to have fun with it, this is like sort of like my dream for a bit too, to just getting into that experience. Versus with someone like, hey, this has to be like my livelihood, like I have like a family to feed and all that, I have to take care of like whoever, and like it's either that or nothing, and even with people who are not like in the music side, like people who've dealt with like addiction, or people who've owned businesses, or people who've experienced some sort of like jail time, or who owned like property and all that, like their experience is going to be different from someone who might have not had that, so I'm kind of more like direct on like who I want to interview with like nowadays too, because usually like with someone who has like more of an experience that we'd like to share, like I'd go with that, versus someone who's only had like this experience for like a little while and all that, because you don't know like where they're at like mentally in terms of like what they want to do for a career and all that. Because I know of some people, like this is their dream, like they want to do an interview and all that, but with other people, you don't know like where their story is, you don't know like how long they've been doing stuff musically. So when I reach out to people who've had like that experience so far, it's actually more suitable, because sometimes you find out like more about them like from before versus now, like have you came like a long way from when you started to make music versus now and all that. Like with Q Gambino, he's been like rapping for like a while now and all that, I think like since mid like 2010s and all that. And like like when we reached out, like I thought it was a good opportunity, because he owns like a brand, he owns like a lot of like other things too, and he's doing it consistently, and that's kind of like the best part, because someone can actually share that story, can share like a lot of gems on like what you need to do to be successful and all that. What are like some trials and tribulations that you'd have to face, whether like the do's and don'ts of trying to be successful and all that. What are some risks that you have to take, versus like what are risks that you have to like avoid and all that, versus someone who's only been in the game for like maybe like a year or so, or like maybe like less than 6 months, who might not have a lot of stuff to share and all that. And you could only talk about the music in that sense too, but sometimes
it only goes so far. Nah, you're right, bro. I've heard other more experienced interviewers say that too, where it's like it specifically artists where they'll want that interview after their first song, or they only got a couple songs, and it's just like, yo, an interview could actually probably hurt you more than help you right now, because you don't have enough of a story to tell. It's a good point that you make, and I would agree. You need to have some sort of catalog. I like how you said that earlier too, where it's like you wanted to build your catalog, build a portfolio. Yeah. You got the work there, you got the experience, allows you to have more to talk about, Yeah.
And as well too, like I feel like with some people too, like I don't try to reach out to big artists as I can, because I know with a lot of them you're gonna get like the whole like backdoor, like they're gonna say no, they're not gonna be like as interested at that time too, and you're gonna be competing with a lot of like interviewers and a lot of like podcasts and stuff like that too.
You gotta know your lane.
Yeah. So you gotta find out like what works like best for you, like what can you do like right now to make your story happen, to make your brand bigger and all that, and then it would lead on to getting into like bigger interviews in the future,
Yep, you're right, bro. You gotta get the ball rolling, and I like how you're willing to go and support young up and coming artists, whoever they are, because any scene needs that, bro. There's young talent that needs to have a platform too, and for yourself to have that, I try to do that myself too. It's important, man. These guys got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
It's real as fuck.
Yeah. And like we could talk about like a lot of like other platforms too, because like right now, like on our lane, it's just you, me, Capital T Filmz.
Shout out Capital T Filmz, man, legend.
Yeah, dope interviewer and like dope filmmaker. You know, like a very like all around guy. You know.
Yeah.
We're gonna be competing with people who've already had like a platform, who bought their way to a platform, like with We Love Hip Hop and all that, with Capital Culture, with Cash Feelings and all that, the guy who does like the interviews right there. So we have to make sure like what can we do to make ours like similar to theirs, like in that sense too, like not just in terms of content but in terms of like branding on like what can we do that could be like different, you know, like with you know, like you have like the imagery like right here, like with the posters, with the sign right there. Like with me, it's just like I try to make it like similar to like Vlad TV, to make it more like within the camera. With Capital T, you know, it's more like finding out like what we could do to make certain stories, like the where you're froms and all that type of stuff too. Like others, you're gonna have to find something that, you know, is like different than others, you know, like you can't just like copy off like one person and expect people to view it, you know, because, you know, that's kind of like the bare minimum, you know. With someone who wants to like get into that scene, you have to do something that's quite different that people will actually like watch, you know, like, and also, you know, consistency is key, you know, like I know some people, they'll drop like an interview like almost every single day, but like it doesn't work like that for everyone, you know. Sometimes you're gonna have to like release like an interview or like 2 interviews, like maybe within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks, you know, or like whatever you can to get the editing done, to find out like what the requests are, like if that person's gonna be available and all that. And sometimes too, you know, you're gonna have days where, you know, you're not shooting content, you know, and like sometimes you feel depressed, but then you're gonna have to find other ways to get the momentum going. Like right now, I'm doing like more like say cheese, 6buzz type posts in terms of the music, like not with other content going on. And like some people, you're gonna have to get those engagements for people to check out that music, for people that wanna be in your platform like one day for an interview or for a podcast, you know, or if you wanna do like some branding like with them in that sense too, versus hey, you're just only someone who does like interviews and all that, and you're only dropping like once in a while, you're not doing like any other content. That's when people will stop like focusing on you, because this first interview that I did, like not Wiz the MC, but this girl named Sienna Shea. Shout out to Sienna Shea, by the way. So she told me the same thing too, like in terms of her music. You know, like she met up with this person named Rooks, who owns Sandbox Studios and all that. And she told me, so Rooks told her, hey, if you're not dropping like videos like every other like 2 or 3 days, or if you're not dropping like free videos within a week, you know, you don't want this, or like free songs within a week, you don't want this, you know. That's the same thing with, you know, creating content like this, you know. You're gonna have to drop like at least 4 or 5 interviews like a month, you know, like if, you know, you're like the Lens of Yashu, or if you are like the Versatile like Vigilante, you know, you're gonna have to drop like 4 or 5 a week, you know, not a week, but like within a month. But then like if you don't even do that, you know, like you don't want this, you know, like you don't know if this is gonna be like the right like lane for you in that sense too. Like with We Love Hip Hop and with other platforms, it's easy for them to drop like an interview or a podcast out almost every single day, like if their means is that platform, you know. With others, you know, maybe might not be as much, you know, like in that sense too. So you're gonna have to find out like how to be consistent, even with like the platform that you're following, you know. So
you touch on a great point. You gotta be consistent, but in your own way too. Like you know, you and I'm a big No Jumper fan. They post every single day. They post every single fucking hour damn near, and it's like I can't compare myself to No Jumper. The resources aren't there. I gotta look more on a level that I'm on. And if you know, if Yashu's able to drop an interview every 2 weeks, I should be able to do that too. Like, and not even as a competition, just as a way of like keeping going, you know. I think healthy competition is a good thing.
I mean, like whoever you could work with, whoever you could be like at truce with, like, you know, work with them, you know, like kind of like find out like what you could do to help them, like in a sense too, like whether you're jumping in for an interview, whether like they're on your platform for an interview, or whether they want you to help out like in the video stuff or within anything else, you know. Connections and just like building like characters and like not characters but like friendships like is key, you know, like in
For
order
sure, bro.
to be within this industry, like not like as like besties, like, you know, you're hanging out like at Starbucks,
Just being
like,
cool.
yeah, just being neutral, you know, just
Yeah.
creating like relationships that lead on to like another level too, you know, and just like if whatever you can to help them, like it's key like in the way too, because Toronto, like there's a lack of support right now in terms of everything that goes on with interviews, with content, with music, with videos and all that. And you know, Toronto, like honestly, like music wise, it's like very like cliquey, you know. And I've noticed that from the start of me doing photography, where certain artists will only hang out with certain artists, certain brands will only hang out with certain brands, you know. So it's not like you're gonna see like Hawaii Mighty hang out with like Pressa or like Top 5,
Yeah.
or you see like a lot of like video directors hang out with like We Love Hip Hop or with like Capital Culture, you know. Like sometimes too, like people are gonna be with their cliques, and sometimes too it sucks because it's not the way to be successful like in the city of Toronto, you know. If you want to be like Atlanta, or if you want to be like New York in that sense too, we're gonna have to build together like in whatever way possible, whether it's like doing like an interview like this with two guys that have like interview platforms that do this together, like that's kind of the way, or you know, two artists like doing like a music video or like a song, that's the way, you know. Because you know, I don't know like the last time if I've ever heard like Hawaii Mighty hop on a track with a Toronto street rapper like Pressa or Top 5, you know. You're never gonna see that, you know, because people are always gonna be like within their own like cliques.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like that until like thing changes, you know.
For sure, bro. I agree, but I think you have the right mindset where it's just like, let's just link up with anybody, you know. And especially if there's a connection there, if you're cool and you both kind of are helping each other. That's the thing. If you're able to help each other, why wouldn't you, you know? If it's a one-way street, that's a little different. I've heard Vlad talk about that too, where it's like, you know, I don't view academics as competition because we can both do our thing. And I think that's a great example to set, where it's like, you don't need to beef with another content creator. You don't need to beef with like, when do you see like, why would you have to beef with another photographer? You know, why not just both link up? You never know. You toss each other some opportunities here and there.
Yeah. And I feel like with Toronto, like I've actually like noticed this too, because like the music industry too, like they kind of favor certain artists like rather than like other artists too.
For sure.
That's why like some artists don't really get that promotion as much too. Like, you know, even like during that whole 2015, 2016 wave, you know, people wanted Toronto to be viewed as like the dark, mysterious six, where
The Weekend
like,
vibe.
yeah, like that, you know, with not Tory Lanez, but like with Jimmy Prime, with Smoke Dogg, with Safe, with Ram Riddles. Like they wanted that scene to pop off, like rather than what it is like now with Pressa, Burning Bands, or like Top 5 and all that. And you know, people wanted that, but then, you know, Toronto music's gonna change like either way. Like it's not gonna be something that it was like in 2016. You know, like music changes and people change. Like you don't want like seeing people either have to be consistent, or like they're gonna have to find like another way to be successful, like in that sense too. You know, and
Yeah.
that's when certain artists become bigger than other artists, and some people like don't like that. You know, like I remember they wanted to promote like that type of sound like so badly, but then, you know, the resources and like everything else too just wasn't hitting like that, you know, especially like when Smoke Dogg died, you know, RIP Smoke Dogg and all that. I think when that happened, you know, like they just focused on like another form of promotion too, because like when Smoke Dogg died, when that sound kind of died, that's when certain artists like blew up more, than like Chromas with Top 5, with Pressa, you know.
Yeah.
And some people either liked it, some people didn't like it, you know. And then you'd have like your indie scene where they have more chances of performing like at the United States or in England because of their branding, because of their accessibility to get into like the countries and all that, rather than, you know, your Pressas, your Burner Bands and all that, because of like whole like legal issues.
Yeah.
I know with Pressa, like he's good right now because he's in LA, but like I'm just saying that as like an example, like in that sense too.
No, you're right, man. It's it shows you. We talked about the gentrification at the beginning of the interview. Things change, bro. What's hot this year is not going to be hot next year, and just to be able to adapt and continue to do your thing is, I think, how you're going to get that longevity. So it's important, bro. I think just got to keep working, man. Keep meeting new people. Keep talking to different people. You can't discriminate in this game, bro.
as far as like even like with music promoters or like concert promoters, you have to, if you want shows to happen like that in Toronto where artists actually have to perform, be open to working with other artists like that. I know with Side Stage Presents and all that, like they're under like Embrace, they're open to working with like anybody and all that, like within the Toronto scene, with like the Toronto street rappers, the Toronto like indie artists and all that, versus like other promoters where they're not linking up with those types of artists. They want to focus on that niche, on that sound. And sometimes too, like it hurts like the long way, because imagine if like that artist like wants to do like shows and all that, like that artist that you don't really promote or like as much wants to do shows, and then you're gonna exclude them from performing, which makes it hard for those types of artists, because they actually want to perform at these types of events like that too. Because when was like the last time a Toronto rapper actually had like their own like headlining show, aside from the ones who are like safe artists? Like,
it's hard, bro. Yeah. It's hard to do. Damn near impossible.
I mean, mainly with the police and all that, and mainly with like resources, logistics, and all that. Like with hosting a show, like there's a lot that comes to it with logistics. If police have to show up, if there's going to be an imminent amount of violence, all that type of stuff too. So sometimes they don't want to take that risk. Sometimes they want to focus on those like niche type artists. But then that's not how Toronto's going to connect either way. You're going to have to be open to working with a lot of these people, like no matter what you feel about them, or no matter like if you don't like them or not, because they're the artists, like you're their outlet to give them a space for people to check them out, for people to see, because even like back then, like with shows in Toronto, it used to be like very open with a lot of people. This is like, I'd say like the early 2000s, early 90s, when Toronto rappers used to like all get along. Like, Mishimi would either like hang out with Cardinal or with Choclair and all that, and Maestro Fresh would probably like hang out with Socrates. I'm not saying like I know them like that, but like that would be like the truth back then, versus now where it's all like cliquey and people don't want to link like that. And
no, it's true, bro. And at the end of the day, that just holds the whole scene back, So I think we're making progress, though. I think the younger guys that I talk to, at least I feel like the spirit is there, the energy's there, and they're down to work. So I think we'll evolve.
Yeah.
But gotta think positive about this shit. Keep it going. Keep grinding. But yeah, bro, we're at about the 1 hour mark. Is there anything else you wanna plug? Any projects you got coming up?
I'd say for me, definitely check out like my new website and upcoming videos that you want to check out soon, like with a lot of interviews, with a lot of dope content. As far as I want to say, like a final message, always support local before like global, because if you're not supporting anyone like locally, like especially like if they've done like stuff for you, like hit them up or like did something for you, like it's not gonna work. Whether it's gonna be like giving them like a free coupon versus like just hanging out with them, like something has to be done like in return in that sense, so yeah.
Well said, bro. Support local. Don't make a judgment either, man. There's a lot of people out there that could help you out, help each other out. Everybody wins. Love to see it. But this was a fire conversation, bro. I appreciate you coming through. The Lens of Yashu's got some dope content, some dope interviews, photos, a lot of good stuff. Check out his IG, his website. Definitely appreciate you stopping by, bro. Versatile Vigilante, we're out here all day. Young Vince, Lens of Yashu, let's get it.
Yeah.
Nice, bro.
Yeah, I didn't even thought like it was like an hour, like
Flies by, bro.